3, 2, 1, speed.
Hi, Felix.
Hi.
How you doing? How did you become interested in music?
Oh, I think it was a friend of mine that was in the 6th or 7th grade said, "Hey man, you listen to rock and roll?" And I said, "What?" And it was because Alan Freed was in our area, you see. And I think that's how I became interested in rock music. But, you know, before that I was studying classical music.
Alan Freed must have been pretty influential to music in this area and to musicians. Would you say so?
I think that's one of the reasons why New York does have so much to offer, is that for some reason, which I really don't know, we were a target area for rock and roll. Even though I understand it did start in Cleveland, it ended up here. So we got all of that. I almost called it culture, but whatever you want to call it. I mean, we got all of that from the 50s as our music. Whereas I don't know if the rest of the country did until much later.
Do you recall your first performance?
Well, yeah, probably, you know, some of the first performances, but you mean as far as with a band or on your own? Or
With a band.
Yeah, I think first performance was probably some kind of a high school dance situation, you know, where you're playing with a band. I recall it, I remember it, yeah.
Were there any New York musicians that influenced you as you were developing?
I wouldn't really know where they were from, because the major influences as a child were from the radio. And you know, you're talking about groups and people from, I think a lot of them came from Chicago, as a matter of fact. We really didn't know, there wasn't that much publicity involved with who actually was doing the singing or the writing or the playing. All you did was you heard Jerry Lee Lewis, for example, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Flamingos, Smokey Robinson. The identification with their personal lives, the only time you found out was when they got in trouble. Like if, you know, somebody got busted or did something nasty, then they rock and roll, you're terrible, you know. So where they're from, I really don't know. Really don't know.
Felix, how did the Rascals get together?
Well, the Rascals basically were put together from 3 other groups. The leaders of each of these bands, we got together to form one band. And, you know, at that time, the British invasion was at its height, and it was very difficult for an American group to get noticed by anyone. So my thinking was that if we had this kind of force coming out of one act, that we would get a little more attention, and we did, because from the beginning, which was February '65, to the first record, which was approximately September, October of that same year, that's the span of time it took to get noticed.
What made the Rascals different, and why did you get noticed?
I think one of the things that made us different was the fact that we did have 3 people who had been leaders of their bands, so they were like focal points almost wherever you looked in the group. And I think the other reason we got noticed is because nobody was paying any attention to what was going on over here. And we just had, you know, a good band, a good group, and I think our adaptation of the music was a little different from what anybody had been hearing at that time. But I don't know, whatever it was, there was a lot of luck involved as well, you know, being in the right place at the right time.
Was there a group or a performer that the Rascals stylized themselves after, or a sound that you stylized yourself after?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that, you know, there was a lot of different influences thrown into this porridge, but as soon as we started playing, something started to happen. It was like a natural act, as opposed to, you know, making a production and planning exactly every note that has to be played. And it came to pass around that the organ became a focal point as well. And then the vocals, I felt, were always very important.
Of your work with the Rascals, is there any era, or is there any particular song or segment that you're the proudest of?
Well, yes, I am. I mean, I'm proudest of People Gotta Be Free, as a matter of fact.
Why?
Only, well, just because it stood for something, it meant something, it meant an awful lot to me and to us. And it became number one in all of the oppressed countries of the world, which I thought was, it's, it's nice to make a lot of money, but it's also nice to, do something. And a lot of us in the 60s, we had different kind of philosophy than, I think is the norm today. We were trying to do something, as crazy as that might sound. We were trying to accomplish something, maybe get somebody's feelings changed about a certain issue, whether it be, a social issue or a political issue. And we really thought we were doing this. I mean, we thought that's what we thought we were doing, let me put it like that.
Do you think that do you think, Felix, that there was a New York sound in the 60s?
Yeah, I think there was. I mean, evidently there was, because there was a few bands that came out of this area, some whose name you would not know probably, but they included people like Leslie West and Vagrants, Vanilla Fudge. Of course, Billy Joel was a product of that as well. He came out of a band, I think, Hassles or something like that. There was something here that I think we had something to do with starting, for whatever that's worth, that was called the New York Sound, for want of a better word.
Do you think that there is a New York sound in the 80s?
No, I think that's one of the problems today is, in the early days of rock, there were regional musics, which were really fascinating. I mean, when you went down south, you heard basically like Allman Brothers would be an exponent of. You heard real funky music. When you went out to Texas, you heard a different kind of music. When you went to California, you heard a different kind of music. When you came here, when you went to Chicago, now, unfortunately, I think this is disappearing. I think that, because the fact that all the radio stations now play the same music, they were all the people around the country playing the same thing. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's shouldn't be like that, because there are differences in the people of those regions, and it should come out more in the music.
We're all becoming very homogenized.
Yeah, I don't really know if there's a New York sound. If there is, I think it's a little more, how should I put it, far out than the rest of the country. If there is, if that in fact came from here, I don't think it did. I think it came from England, but it's found its nest here. Whereas the rest of the country, from what I know anyway, does not seem to really take to that. New York Dolls, I think, was the beginning of that, wasn't it?
The only thing that I can think of that maybe, I don't know how you feel about it, has maybe its home in New York, is rap music. Or do you have any familiarity?
I'm familiar. I wasn't aware of that, but good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lovin' was your first #1 single.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, we used to do that in our club act, which is what we were before we became a recording act. And it was a song that came from a group called the Olympics. And we did it in the studio and didn't like it at all. We thought we could do it much better because we had been performing it so many times. And we went on tour to California. We went to work out there, and it became #1. So after that, we just were a little quieter with our opinions in the studio after that. But it was exciting. It's very exciting. It's like being on that rocket at the beginning of that program. That's what it's like. It's a lot of fun.
As we were discussing a little while ago, to go into the program, we found a clip of Good Lovin'. Do you remember, it was done in the recording studio, do you remember when that was being filmed?
I've seen that. I really don't. A lot of those years went by a little blurry, if you know what I mean. But I really don't remember that. I've seen it, and it's hot. I think it was live. I think it sounds like it's live.
Do you have any regrets, or regrets might be the wrong word, maybe just feelings about what, and saying film and thinking about the clip brought up the question in my mind, about what music video is doing for music today. Do you regret at all not being, the Rascals not having happened so big when music video was happening? Do you think it's important to a band, or?
Well, I mean, we all were aware that this was coming. And, I usually tell a little, I mean, you know, it's really nothing new. I mean, because in the 60s there were many, many people who would be in their rooms indulging in some sort of activity, and they turned the sound off on the television and play a record, and we had our own music videos. But in answer to your question, no, I think this is for today, you know? I mean, this is what's happening now, and I think it's great. I think we would have been very good for it because we had a lot of personalities in our band that you know, would have probably come across on screen. But as far as regretting, yeah, of course, we would love to have been part of this, but, you know, it was later.
In your mind, what do you think were the best or your most memorable Rascals gigs?
Oh, wow. One stands out, and that's because, again, there was some purpose to it. We did a benefit concert at Madison Square Garden for Martin Luther King with King Curtis, Aretha Franklin, Sam and Dave, I think Sonny and Cher. That was just probably, you know, one of the nights that you just never forget kind of evening. It was, you know, it was a free evening. That one stands out.
Who were some of the best musicians that you ever performed with?
Wow. Well, when you're speaking as a musician, I would say that, you know, certainly the best guitarist that we ever performed with was Jimi Hendrix, who did his first New York appearance as The Experience with us at Central Park, which was very interesting, to say the least, because no one here really knew who or what was coming on. And he opened for us at Central Park. That was an evening that will go down in memory. And of course, I can remember working with Cream. I can remember working with The Who. I can remember saying, why are these guys destroying the set? I don't know. Again, you know, being on Atlantic, we were around some of the finest musicians of the time, and just some of them stand out, you know. But there were a lot of good bands, and there were a lot of bad bands. I guess it's just like it is today, you know. But I think there was more. I think, of a difference among the bands, I would say, than now. I think they're a little more similar. You know, they take from porridges today that they were a little more experimental, I think, in the '60s. At least the ones that were heard.
So what was the year of the Central Park thing?
Oh, gee, I don't remember, '67, something like that.
And it was just the Rascals and Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, that was quite an evening.
That's absolutely amazing.
It was absolutely amazing because, you know, I had known him from the past, and he was an awfully nice person. Very, very nice person. I mean, we had a loss not only as a musician but as a human being, because he was something real special, you know. It's a shame.
What's it like producing Laura Nyro, going on to a different topic
God.
real quickly?
Well, I was introduced to her as the most difficult person to produce in the entire music business, and she lived up to it. She's very sincere about her work, and although I believe it should be taken seriously, it's very tough to get anything inside of her work that is not hers. And it creates an atmosphere that, you know, although I was warned not to say anything bad about anyone, it should be a little more fun. And it's tough, you see, because she's so intense, so intense. But, you know, hopefully, you know, when you get through the war, that the end of the battle, the end of the war was worthwhile. You know, it's intense music, so it's intense working with her.
Was it very difficult when you were with the Rascals? Were you people that as intense or that unwilling to let other people inside your music and what was going on?
Well, that happens with any band. I think you get this kind of like cattle mentality, you know, which I think, you know, maybe some people are exceptions to that, but most of the time, you know, you really only play with each other. And that's not, you know, really you get this herd feeling, you know. As far as intense, no, I think that we had a lot more fun about it, you know. We knew what we were doing. I mean, we knew we were in there to make hit records and all that stuff, but we thought that, you know, like, we were supposed to have a little fun in that life. And we did. We had a lot of fun. And the pressures were a lot different. And I think today, I really look at these groups today, and they realize they have one chance. That's tough. I think a lot of the bands would not have made it if they had one chance, because you don't have the chance to develop. we were allowed to fail and develop and grow. And I don't see that today. I see that, you know, like, and if you don't do it, you're gone. I think there's a lot of talent out there in the hills that we're not hearing.
How tough do you think it is to make it in New York as compared to someplace else?
I think if you're good, you're all right. But if you're just borderline or you're trying to put something over, you're in trouble. You know, like it's only a short period of time before somebody says, hey, that's jive. See, whereas other places, I think you can maybe do a little hyping and get away with it. New York, you know, is kind of like irreverent to that. And plus, a lot of good music comes through here and still comes through here. So, you know, they really, whereas if you're in a smaller town, you're not going to hear all the, you know, the top names. You have a lot to compare to and be compared with. But I don't know, we just never really had any problem with New York. New York people are great. You know, I hear the sports guys say it all the time. They're the most knowledgeable sports fans, or some of the most. They know what's good. So if you're good, come here, you'll be fine. If you're not,
Well, I have to ask, do you think the Rascals will ever reform?
I don't know if they would ever reform. I think, you know, probably one night we'll probably have a little party and get together and play for some of our friends and maybe film it. As far as reforming and starting over again, I really doubt it, because it's sort of like, well, to me it's sort of like going backwards. And being a Sagittarian, I like to go that way. And I think it would be just a nice big party, a lot of fun, a couple of nights, and that could possibly happen. Yeah.
Well, we all hope we get invited to your party.
Well, that's what it's for.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, speed.
And Good Lovin' was a song that we used to do in our club act that always went over very well.
I think that'll do it. Okay, now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, speed.
Felix, can you tell me about the names and a little bit about the other people who were in the Rascals with you?
Well, we had a very, very fine drummer by the name of Dino Danelli, who I think, if you ever have your drum program, will certainly be included in that. He's a fantastic drummer, who is now working with Little Steven. And we had a guitarist by the name of Gene Cornish, who was from upstate New York. And then we had my co-writer and co-singer, Eddie Brigatti, who was from Jersey. And you know, yay big. He was the spark of the band. And that's it. We were only 4. We did not have a bass player on stage. Played bass with the organ foot, which I wonder if that would work today. Those are the Rascals.
Great. That's it.